Spring does not ask for permission before it arrives. It simply appears, quietly, gently, and suddenly the world begins to breathe again. In a town washed in pale sunlight and drifting cherry blossoms, a boy lives in silence. Not the silence of the world, but the silence within his own heart. Music once flowed through him like a second soul, yet now every note feels distant, like an echo fading into emptiness. His days pass in monochrome, untouched by color, untouched by hope. And then, like a melody carried by the wind, she appears. A girl as bright as April skies, as fleeting as falling petals, and as unpredictable as music played without fear. Their meeting is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is simply the moment when winter begins to melt. Because sometimes a single person enters your life not to stay forever, but to awaken something inside you that had long forgotten how to live. This is a story about music that speaks when words cannot, about love that blooms even in the shadow of goodbye, and about how the most beautiful melodies are often the ones that fade the fastest. The story of Your Lie in April follows Kōsei Arima, a young boy who was once known as a piano prodigy, a boy whose fingers could command the keys like flawless precision. Music was not just a skill for him, it was his entire world, the language through which he understood life. But after the death of his mother, the person who shaped his musical identity, something inside him fractures. The piano that once sang beneath his hands becomes silent, not because he cannot play, but because he can no longer hear it. This silence is not literal, it is emotional. His trauma manifests as a psychological barrier, turning sound into emptiness. Every note dissolves into a hollow echo, as if he is submerged underwater, disconnected from the very thing that once gave him meaning. The world around him continues as normal, but inside, time has stopped. His days become routine, colorless and detached. He walks through life like a ghost of his former self, unable to move forward, yet unable to return to who he once was. Music, which once represented love and connection, now reminds him only of pressure, pain, and loss. His mother's strict training, once an act of care, becomes tangled with memories of suffering. This duality traps him. If he plays, he relives the trauma. If he stops, he loses his identity. So he chooses the safest path, emotional stillness. He convinces himself that he has moved on, but in truth, he is frozen in grief, living in a world drained of sound and color. Then, like the first breeze of spring, Kaori Miyazono enters his life. She is vibrant, spontaneous, and alive in a way that contrasts sharply to his muted existence. Her violin playing is imperfect, emotional, and rebellious, the opposite of everything Kōsei was taught. Through her, music becomes something new, not a cage of perfection, but a field of freedom. Kaori does not simply encourage him to play again. She challenges the very foundation of how he sees music, pain, and life itself. Where he seeks safety, she embraces risk. Where he hides, she expresses. Her presence begins to crack the ice around his heart, slowly returning sound to his silent world. And as he starts to listen again, not just to music, but to emotion, he begins the painful yet beautiful journey of rediscovering himself. Thus, the core of Kōsei Arima is not only about a boy who lost music. It is about a soul that lost its voice, and the person who helped him hear it again. It is about how grief can silence us, and how, sometimes, another human being can become the melody that leads us back to life. Music in this anime is not merely a background element. It is the very language through which the characters reveal their inner worlds. Words often fail them. Their emotions are too complex, too heavy, or too fragile to speak out loud. And so, they turn to sound. Every performance becomes a confession. Every melody a conversation between hearts. In the story, music is not something they play. It is something they feel, something they are. Arima represents technical perfection. His playing is precise, controlled, and exact. Every note aligned perfectly with the score. He performs as if bound by invisible chains, terrified of making mistakes. This rigidity reflects his upbringing, shaped by discipline and expectation. For him, music becomes a duty, something to be executed correctly rather than experienced emotionally. His performances impress judges, but they lack warmth. They are flawless, yet distant, like a beautiful painting locked behind glass. In contrast, Kaori embodies freedom. Her violin playing breaks rules, bends tempo, and overflows with emotion. She does not aim for perfection. She aims for expression. Her music laughs, cries, trembles, and soars. It feels alive because it mirrors the unpredictability of human emotion. To her, music is not about obeying the composer. It is about telling a story. She plays as if each note is a heartbeat, as if silence itself would be unbearable. Through their contrast, the anime asks a profound question. What is the true purpose of art? Is it to achieve technical excellence or to communicate the soul? Kōsei's journey gradually shifts from precision to expression. As he begins to play with emotion, his performances transform. He stops trying to be perfect and starts trying to be honest. The piano becomes more than an instrument. It becomes his voice, a way to release grief, longing, and hope. Music here also functions as a bridge between people. Characters understand each other not through long conversations, but through shared performances. When Kōsei listens to Kaori play, he hears her courage. When she listens to him, she hears his pain. Their emotions intertwine in sound, forming a connection deeper than words. This is why their duet feels intimate. They are not just playing together, they are sharing pieces of themselves. Ultimately, the series suggests that music is the purest form of emotional truth. Words can be hidden, smiles can be forced, but sound reveals what lies beneath. Through music, the characters confront their fears, honor their memories, and move forward. It becomes a language of healing, a way to transform sorrow into beauty. And in doing so, it reminds us that sometimes the deepest parts of the human soul are not meant to be spoken. They are meant to be heard. Themes and symbolism in this anime are woven delicately in every frame, transforming the story into more than a simple romance. Beneath the music and emotion lies a meditation on life, loss, and the fleeting beauty of existence. The story constantly reminds us that moments are temporary, yet their emotional impact can last forever. Through visual imagery, seasonal changes, and musical performances, the story quietly explores the fragility of youth and the courage required to keep living even when pain feels overwhelming. One of the strongest themes is impermanence, symbolized by spring itself. April, the season of cherry blossoms, represents both beginnings and endings. Blossoms bloom beautifully, but only for a short time before they fall. This mirrors the presence of Kaori Miyazono, vibrant, radiant, and fleeting. Her character embodies the idea that beauty is often temporary, and that transience is what gives life meaning. The falling petals that frequently surround her are symbolized moments slipping away, reminding viewers that time moves forward whether we are ready or not. Another powerful theme is grief and emotional healing, symbolized through silence and sound. Arima's inability to hear the piano represents emotional numbness. He is surrounded by music, yet he experiences none of it. This silence becomes a metaphor for depression and unresolved trauma. As he gradually confronts his memories and begins to accept his past, sound slowly returns. The restoration of music symbolizes the return of feeling, proof that healing is not intimate, but a slow rediscovery of emotion. Color symbolism also plays a major role throughout the anime. At the beginning, Kōsei's world is visually muted, almost monochrome. The environment feels washed out, reflecting his inner emptiness. When Kaori enters his life, vibrant colors begin to appear. Blue skies, golden sunlight, and pink petals. This shift symbolizes emotional awakening. Color becomes a representation of hope, illustrating how another person's presence can bring warmth back into a cold, stagnant life. As Kōsei grows, the world becomes more vivid, showing that healing changes not just the heart, but perception itself. Music itself functions as a central symbol of communication beyond words. Many characters struggle to express their feelings verbally, but when they perform, their emotions become undeniable. Each performance is less about competition and more about confession. Through music, characters say, "I'm hurting," "I'm grateful," or "I don't want to forget." The stage becomes a place where vulnerability is allowed, and sound becomes the bridge connecting isolated hearts. This reinforces the idea that art is often the most honest form of human expression. The theme of youth and first love is also symbolic. The characters experience emotions with an intensity unique to adolescence. Everything feels overwhelming, pure, and irreversible. This stage of life is portrayed as both beautiful and painful. The anime suggests that first love is not always meant to last, but it shapes who we become. It is a transformative experience, one that teaches courage, empathy, and resilience. Through this lens, love becomes less about permanence and more about growth. Finally, the anime explores legacy and memory. Even after people leave, their influence continues. Kaori's impact on Kōsei does not fade. It becomes part of his music, his choices, and his identity. This symbolizes the idea that human connection can never truly disappear. They echo through time, much like a melody lingering after the final note. The story ultimately suggests that while life is temporary, the emotions we share create something enduring, a quiet, invisible music that continues long after the performance ends. Love and loss are inseparable. To love someone is to accept the possibility of goodbye. But rather than avoiding love to escape pain, the anime encourages embracing it fully. Because even if love is brief, it can leave behind strength, inspiration, and memories that continue to guide us. In this bittersweet truth, the story finds its deepest message. That sometimes the most fleeting love becomes the one that lasts forever in the heart. Tragedy is also not used simply to evoke sadness. It serves a deeper emotional and philosophical purpose. The story builds towards loss not as a shock, but as an inevitable part of life's fragile beauty. From the beginning, there is a quiet awareness that happiness in this world is delicate. This underlying tension makes every joyful moment more meaningful because it exists alongside the possibility of goodbye. The tragedy, therefore, is not separate from the story's beauty. It is what gives that beauty its depth. The fate of Kaori Miyazono becomes the emotional turning point that defines the narrative. Her presence fills the world with color, laughter, and music. But her absence forces the characters, especially Kōsei, to confront life without her. This loss is devastating, yet it pushes him towards growth. Without relying on her encouragement, he must find his own strength. The tragedy becomes a catalyst, transforming him from someone who depends on inspiration into someone who carries it within himself. The narrative suggests that some people are not meant to stay forever, but their role is still essential. Kaori's limited time gives urgency to her actions. She lives intensely, expresses freely, and pours everything into the moments she has. Because of this, her influence becomes profound. If her story had ended differently, the emotional weight of her impact may not have been as strong. Her absence ensures that her memory becomes a guiding light, rather than just another chapter that quietly fades. Tragedy also reinforces one of the central messages of the anime. Growth often comes through pain. Kōsei cannot return to his old life unchanged. Instead, he learns to carry grief alongside hope. His music after loss becomes deeper, filled with emotion shaped by both love and sorrow. The story shows that suffering, while painful, can expand a person's emotional world. It does not erase happiness, it makes it more meaningful. Tragedy matters because it transforms the story from a simple tale of romance into a reflection of life itself. It reminds us that people may leave, but the love they give does not disappear. Kaori's physical presence ends, yet her influence continues to resonate through Kōsei's music and his decision to keep moving forward. In this way, the tragedy is not the end. It is the moment where memory becomes purpose, and where loss becomes the quiet beginning of a new melody. The final message of the story is both gentle and profound. Life is fragile, moments are fleeting, and yet the connections we form give meaning to everything. The anime does not offer a simple happy ending. Instead, it delivers something more honest, the understanding that joy and sorrow exist together, and that beauty often appears most vividly in impermanence. Through its story, the series quietly tells us that even temporary encounters can leave permanent marks on the heart. For Arima, the journey is not just about returning to music, but about learning to live fully despite loss. He begins as someone trapped in silence, afraid to feel, afraid to move forward. But by the end, he understands that pain is not something to avoid, but something to carry with courage. His growth reflects the anime's core message. We cannot stop time, and we cannot prevent goodbye, but we can choose how we continue afterward. The influence of Kaori becomes the emotional heart of this message. Though her presence is brief, her impact is lasting. She teaches Kōsei to embrace imperfection, to express emotion, and to find color in life again. Even after she is gone, her spirit remains in his music and in the way he sees the world. Love does not disappear with absence. It transforms into memory, inspiration, and strength. The anime ultimately speaks about moving forward. It acknowledges grief but refuses to let it define the future. Instead, it shows that memories can become a source of warmth rather than pain. Kōsei's decision to keep playing symbolizes acceptance, not forgetting the past, but honoring it. Each note he plays carries echoes of what he experienced, turning loss into something meaningful rather than empty. This story leaves us with a quiet but powerful truth. People may enter our lives only for a short time, yet they can change our entire path. The story encourages us to cherish the present, to express what we feel, and to live without holding back. Because even when a melody fades, the emotion it created continues to resonate. And sometimes the most beautiful part of life is not how long something lasts, but how deeply it felt. In the end, Your Lie in April is like a melody that lingers long after the final note fades. It is a story that does not simply end, it echoes. It reminds us that some people arrive in our lives like spring, bringing warmth in places we thought would remain cold forever. And even when they leave, the season they created within us never truly disappears. Kōsei's journey teaches us that grief and love are not opposites, but companions. To love deeply is to risk losing, yet it is also to experience life in its most vivid colors. The pain he carries is not a burden alone. It is also proof that his heart learned to feel again. Every note he plays becomes a whisper of memory, a quiet thank you to the person who helped him find his voice. There is a gentle sadness in the story, but it is not empty. It is filled with light, the light of moments shared, of laughter that once existed, of music that connected two souls. It tells us that even if time is short, the emotions we give and receive can last far beyond our presence. Love does not vanish. It transforms into courage, into inspiration, into the strength to keep moving forward. And so, the final message is soft yet powerful. Live while the petals are still falling. Play while the music is still within you. Love even if goodbye is inevitable. Because sometimes the most beautiful melodies are not the ones that last forever, but the ones that change us forever.